Your rose is talking to you right now. Those yellowing leaves, the spots on the foliage, the canes that look wrong, but you can't quite name why. The plant is sending signals, clear, specific signals that tell you exactly what's going wrong and exactly what to do about it. Most gardeners miss them, not because they don't care, because they've been taught to look at the wrong things. The most expensive mistake in rose gardening isn't buying the wrong variety. It isn't bad soil or the wrong fertilizer. It's misreading what your rose is already telling you and treating the wrong problem. Today, I'm going through 7 midsummer warning signs that Zone 5 to 6 rose gardeners need to know right now. In July, when heat and humidity are at their peak, and your roses are under more stress than at any other point in the season. One of these signs is almost universally misdiagnosed, and that misdiagnosis makes the actual problem significantly worse. Stay with me through sign 1. That's the one that changes everything. Set up the diagnostic approach before the first sign. Before we get into the signs, one thing to understand that makes all of this make sense: roses don't get sick randomly. Every visible symptom above ground is a response to a specific condition, usually below ground or in the immediate environment around the plant. What you see on the leaves, the canes, the blooms, that's the report card. The actual problem is almost always somewhere else, which is why treating the symptom directly without understanding the cause gives you temporary relief at best and makes things worse at worst. These 7 signs are organized by what they look like first, then what they actually mean, then what to do about it. By the end of this, you'll be reading your roses the way experienced growers do, not reacting to symptoms, but understanding what the plant is communicating. Let's start with the one that causes the most damage because it's the most misread. Sign 1. Yellowing leaves with dark spots. You walk out to your roses in July and you see it. Leaves turning yellow, dark spots spreading across the surface, more spots appearing every day. Your first thought: I've been overwatering. I need to back off the water. That instinct is wrong, and acting on it makes everything significantly worse. Here's what's actually happening. Those yellow leaves with dark spots are almost certainly black spot, Diplocarpon rosea, a fungal disease that thrives in exactly the warm, humid conditions your Zone 5 to 6 garden is experiencing right now in July. The yellowing isn't from too much water, it's the plant's response to fungal infections spreading through the leaf tissue. Here's the biological detail that changes how you see this forever. Black spot doesn't just sit on the surface of the leaf. Once a spore germinates, which takes as little as 7 hours of wet leaf surface in warm temperatures, the fungus penetrates the leaf cuticle and begins growing inside the tissue. The dark lesion you see on the surface is the visible portion of an infection that's already systemic within that leaf. The yellowing is the plant abandoning the infected leaf, cutting off resources to tissue it can no longer save, preparing to drop it. When you back off watering because you think you're overwatering, you stress the plant at exactly the moment it needs resources to fight infection. The disease advances faster. More leaves yellow, more leaves drop. The plant weakens further. The fix has 2 parts. First, do not reduce watering unless the soil is genuinely waterlogged. Check soil moisture at 4 inches depth near the roots. If it's moist but not saturated, maintain your normal watering schedule. Second, remove every affected leaf immediately, not eventually. Now. Each spotted leaf is a spore reservoir. Every time it rains or you water, spores wash off that leaf onto healthy tissue below. Remove infected leaves, bag them, never compost them, and dispose through municipal yard waste. Then address the conditions that allowed infection to start. Airflow, base watering only, mulch to prevent soil splash. We covered the full system in the black spot prevention video, link on screen now. The misdiagnosis costs you weeks of recovery time and a significantly weakened plant heading into August. The correct diagnosis costs you 15 minutes and a garbage bag. Sign 2. Wilting despite regular watering. Leaves drooping, stems losing their upright structure, but the soil is moist. You watered 2 days ago. This makes no sense. Except it does, once you understand what's happening below the surface. Wilting despite adequate soil moisture is one of the clearest signs of root stress in roses. And in July in Zone 5 to 6, the most common cause is root rot from overwatering earlier in the season compounded by summer heat. Here's the specific biology. Healthy rose roots absorb water through osmosis. Water moves from the soil into the root cells because the concentration of dissolved minerals inside the root is higher than in the surrounding soil. Root rot, caused by Phytophthora and Pythium fungi that thrive in waterlogged, low-oxygen soil, destroys that root tissue. Dead roots cannot absorb water regardless of how much is available in the soil. So the plant wilts, not because there's no water, because the roots that would normally deliver it are gone. Healthy white roots versus brown rotted roots. The diagnostic test: gently expose the top inch of roots near the crown. Healthy roots are white or cream-colored and firm. Rotted roots are brown, soft, and may smell slightly of decay. The fix depends on severity. Mild root rot. Improve drainage immediately. Pull back mulch from the crown. Let the soil dry partially between waterings. Add horticultural grit around the root zone to improve oxygen flow. Severe root rot. The plant may not recover. But before you give up, cut back the top growth by 1/3 to reduce the water demand on a compromised root system. Treat with a biological fungicide containing trichoderma and give it 4 to 6 weeks. Roses are tougher than they look. Sign 3. No second flush. Blooms stopped after June. Your roses bloomed beautifully in June. Now it's July and nothing is happening. No new buds, no signs of the second flush that repeat blooming varieties are supposed to produce. Most gardeners assume the variety isn't as repeat blooming as advertised, or that the heat has shut the plant down. Usually it's neither. When a rose bloom fades and you leave it on the plant, the rose reads that as a successful reproduction event and begins directing energy toward developing a rose hip, a seed pod. That energy redirection is significant. A plant actively developing hips is a plant that has deprioritized producing new flowers. In botanical terms, it has completed its reproductive cycle for that flush. The second flush in repeat blooming roses is triggered by deadheading, removing spent blooms before the plant begins hip development. The window matters. Deadhead within 3 to 5 days of a bloom fading, and you redirect that energy back into new bud development. Wait 2 weeks, and hip development is already underway. The second flush is delayed by weeks or may not happen at all before the season ends. In zone 5 to 6, this timing issue is more critical than in warmer climates. Your growing season ends in October at the latest. Every week of delayed second flush is a week less of blooming before the first frost. Deadhead consistently and promptly, and you protect your entire second and potentially third flush of the season. The fix? Check spent blooms every 3 to 4 days throughout July and August. Cut back to the first strong outward-facing leaf with 5 leaflets. That's the signal point that initiates the next bloom cycle most efficiently. Sign 4. Canes dying back from the tip. Brown dead tissue at the tips of canes progressing downward. The cane looks healthy below the dead section. The dieback stops somewhere mid-cane, and the rest of the plant looks fine. Most gardeners assume this is winter damage they missed in spring. In July, in zone 5 to 6, that's almost never the case. Midsummer cane dieback has 2 primary causes, and they require different responses. The first is pruning cut placement from earlier in the season. Cuts made too far above a bud node, more than a 1/4 inch, leave a stub of cane that cannot receive adequate moisture or nutrients from the vascular system. That stub dies back. If the dieback reaches the bud node below it, it continues progressing. This is called cane dieback from improper cut placement, and it's entirely preventable. The second cause is more interesting, and more alarming if you catch it early enough to act. Rose cane borers are the larvae of certain wasps and beetles that lay eggs in the soft pith of freshly cut rose canes. The larvae burrow downward through the pith, causing the characteristic top-down dieback pattern. You can confirm this by cutting the affected cane 1 inch below the dieback line and examining the cut surface. A healthy cane shows solid white or cream pith. A borer-infested cane shows a hollow channel or brown discoloration in the center. The fix for pruning dieback: cut back to healthy wood. A clean cut just above a healthy outward-facing bud. The dieback stops when you remove the dead tissue above viable wood. The fix for cane borers: cut well below the affected section until you reach solid, healthy pith. Seal the cut with white school glue or nail polish to prevent reinfestation on that cane. Dispose of the affected sections in sealed bags, not compost. Quick pause. If this is already changing how you're looking at your roses, hit subscribe. We go this deep on every rose care topic here. 4 more signs to go, and the next one is the one most gardeners never connect to what they're actually seeing. Let's keep going. Sign 5. Stunted slow new growth despite feeding. You're feeding your roses on schedule. The soil looks fine, but the new growth coming in is small, pale, and slow. Not the vigorous dark green shoots you expect in midsummer. The instinct is to feed more. apply another round of fertilizer, push the plant harder. That instinct makes this specific problem worse. Here's why. Stunted, pale growth despite adequate feeding is one of the clearest signs of pH lockout, a condition where the soil pH has drifted outside the range where roses can access the nutrients already present in the soil. Roses need a soil pH of 6.0 to 6.5. Outside that range, particularly above 7.0, iron, manganese, and other micronutrients become chemically bound to soil particles. They're physically present in the soil. The roots simply cannot absorb them. Adding more fertilizer to pH-locked soil is like pouring water into a glass with a sealed lid. The nutrition is there. The plant cannot access it. In Zone 5 to 6, summer watering with municipal water, which is often slightly alkaline, can gradually raise soil pH around rose roots over a season. This is a slow, invisible drift that shows up as stunted growth in July and August without any obvious cause. The diagnostic fix: test your soil pH. Inexpensive test kits are available at any garden center. Test within 6 inches of the root zone of the affected plant. If pH is above 6.5, apply sulfur to lower it. Elemental sulfur works slowly but reliably. For faster results, use a chelated iron drench, which makes iron available to the plant even at higher pH, while the sulfur works long-term. If pH is in range, the issue may be a specific micronutrient deficiency. Pale yellow new growth with green veins is classic iron chlorosis. Overall pale growth is often manganese deficiency. A targeted micronutrient supplement addresses both without disturbing your overall feeding program. Sign 6. Sparse leggy growth. Flowers only at the top. Long, bare canes. All the growth and flowers happening at the very top of the plant, while the lower portions are woody and empty. The rose looks like it's trying to escape upward. This sign appears most dramatically on climbing roses, but affects shrub roses trained against walls or fences too. Most gardeners assume the lower portions of the plant have died, or the variety is just naturally sparse at the base. What's actually happening is one of the most fascinating pieces of plant biology in the garden. Roses, like most plants, exhibit apical dominance. Growth hormones called auxins are produced at the highest growing points of each stem and flow downward, actively suppressing the development of lateral buds below. The plant is hardwired to prioritize the highest point. Everything below that point receives a chemical signal that says, "Don't grow yet." When you train a rose cane vertically, every bud on that cane experiences the same suppression because the auxin gradient runs straight down the cane. The top bud gets all the resources. Everything below waits indefinitely. The fix is training, not pruning. Take any flexible cane and redirect it as close to horizontal as possible. Tie it to a support at a 45-degree angle or flatter. The moment you change the orientation of that cane, you interrupt the auxin gradient. Every upward-facing bud along the horizontal cane now thinks it's the highest point. Every one of them breaks dormancy and pushes a flowering lateral shoot. One cane trained horizontally in midsummer will push multiple new shoots that bloom in the second and third flush. The same cane left vertical will push one cluster at the top and nothing else. This is not a fix for next year. You can begin training existing canes right now and see lateral shoot development within 2 to 3 weeks. Sign 7. Rose not recovering between flushes. Mid-July, plants look tired, foliage dull, little new growth visible. The final sign is the subtlest and the most serious long-term. Your roses bloomed in June. They're not showing the stress signs we've covered. No black spot, no wilting, no dieback. But they look tired, dull foliage, slow recovery between flushes, less vigor than earlier in the season. A garden that looked spectacular in June, looking flat and underwhelming in July. This is midsummer depletion, and it's not a single problem, it's a system problem. Here's the biological detail that explains it. Producing a flush of blooms is one of the most energetically expensive things a rose does. The stored carbohydrates, minerals, and biological activity that supported June's bloom display have been substantially depleted. In a garden with living, active soil biology, the microbial community we covered in the black spot video, that depletion is partially offset by continuous biological activity, breaking down organic matter and making nutrients available. The soil is actively resupplying the plant between flushes. In depleted, low biology soil, there's no resupply happening. The plant produced its June flush and is now running on a nearly empty tank with nothing actively refilling it. The midsummer fix has 3 components. First, a compost tea drench applied directly to the soil around each plant. Compost tea delivers concentrated beneficial microbes directly to the root zone and jumpstarts biological activity that begins making nutrients available within days, not weeks. Second, a liquid feed with a balanced organic fertilizer. Not synthetic. We covered why synthetic inputs suppress the soil biology you're trying to rebuild. Fish emulsion, or a balanced liquid organic feed applied as a foliar spray and soil drench, gives the plant immediate accessible nutrition while the biology rebuilds. Third, a fresh layer of compost as a top dressing. Half an inch applied around the drip line, not touching the crown. This feeds the soil biology from above and moderates soil temperature. In July, in zone 5 to 6, soil temperatures can climb high enough to slow biological activity significantly. Compost insulates while it feeds. Give this 3-part intervention 10 to 14 days, and you'll see the difference in the quality and vigor of the second flush compared to a depleted garden that received none of it. Here's what these 7 signs have in common. Every single one of them: the black spot misread, the wilting, the stalled flush, the dieback, the stunted growth, the bare legs, the midsummer depletion, every one of them is a communication from a plant that knows exactly what it needs and has no other way to tell you. The gardeners who have spectacular roses in July, the ones whose gardens people stop in front of, aren't luckier than you. They're not using a secret product or a magic schedule. They've learned to read what their roses are saying before the problem becomes a crisis. Black spot caught in the first spotted leaf costs you 15 minutes. Black spot misdiagnosed as overwatering for 2 weeks costs you the plant's entire midsummer health. Cane dieback caught early costs you 1 cut. Cane dieback ignored costs you the cane. The difference between a struggling rose garden and a spectacular one in zone 5 to 6 midsummer is almost entirely about how quickly and accurately you read these signals. You now know what to look for. Go check your roses. Which of these 7 signs are you seeing in your garden right now? Tell me in the comments. Describe exactly what you're seeing, and I'll tell you what I think is causing it. I read every comment, and these diagnostic conversations are some of the most useful on the channel. If this changed how you're reading your roses, give it a thumbs up. It helps other rose gardeners find this instead of misdiagnosing the same problems. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video where we go deep on midsummer feeding, exactly what to apply, when, and in what sequence to support the second flush. Until next time, happy gardening!